You know, those big questions that sort of swirl around in your head about spirituality, your inner soul.
Yeah, definitely.
And right there, almost always, is that one question, what's my purpose? Which, well, it leads you straight to thinking about destiny, doesn't it?
It really does. It's such a fundamental human thing, trying to figure out why we're here, what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And there are so many ideas out there about finding your path.
Exactly. But today, we're taking a bit of a different route. We're not really sticking to the usual inspirational quotes, you know.
Mm-hmm.
We've got this source material that has a pretty, let's say, unconventional view on destiny and spiritual purpose. It's maybe less love and light than you might expect.
Oh, yeah, putting it mildly.
Yeah.
This stuff, it really challenges those common, sometimes quite rosy pictures we paint of our spiritual journeys. It's not the typical feel-good guide at all.
Absolutely. So our mission for this deep dive is really to unpack what this source is saying. Look at its, well, surprising claims, maybe even the darkly funny bits. We want to help you understand this alternative way of looking at your own path, at this whole destiny idea.
Sounds good. Where do we start?
Okay, so let's dive in. Right off the bat, the source kind of takes aim at how the self-help world often talks about destiny, you know, very idealized.
Right.
It uses this amazing phrase, destiny as an overpriced carrot on a karmic stick. What does that immediately make you think of?
We instantly get that image of like constantly chasing something that feels just out of reach, right?
Yeah.
And the karmic stick part suggests there's this system, maybe rewards, maybe punishments pushing you along. But the overpriced carrot, that makes you think maybe what we're chasing isn't actually worth the effort or isn't as attainable as we're told.
Right.
Like a spiritual wild goose chase almost.
Totally. It really nails that feeling. And then it says, this search for purpose can feel like, and I quote, the spiritual version of do you like me? That hit home for me. It just points to that deep need for validation, even from the universe, you know?
Absolutely. That need to feel chosen or approved of on some cosmic level.
But then here's where it gets really different. The source just throws this out there.
Yeah.
Your soul's divine purpose might involve ruining someone else's life.
Wow. Okay.
I mean, you're not going to find that on a motivational poster, are you?
No, definitely not. That's a jarring thought. It just completely flips the script, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. The whole idea that our purpose is always about being good or, you know, contributing positively in the usual ways.
Right.
What's really interesting there is the implication of something much more complex, like an interconnected web where one person's path, maybe driven by their karma, could actually have, well, genuinely bad consequences for someone else.
Mm-hmm.
It forces you to ask, is the spiritual journey always smooth sailing for everyone involved? Probably not.
Exactly. And it builds on that. It says our karmic path might involve morally gray plot lines, ethical migraines, and zero Instagrammable moments.
Ethical migraines, I like that.
Yeah. It paints this picture of destiny that's just messy, complicated, definitely not always pretty. And this idea of potentially being the villain in someone else's enlightenment arc, that's really something to chew on. What does that imply, do you think, for how we see our own struggles or maybe even the difficult people in our lives?
Well, if you really take that idea seriously, it kind of forces you to question your immediate judgments, right? About what's good and bad, not just in yourself, but how others show up in your life too.
Mm-hmm.
It suggests that even things that feel really negative, maybe even harmful, could be part of some bigger, maybe unknowable karmic picture, something that ultimately helps someone grow, even if it feels awful at the time. It challenges our limited viewpoint, you know, our tendency to just label things good or evil.
It really does make you rethink things. Okay, so moving on from this maybe less glamorous view of destiny, the source introduces destiny as karma's tax return, another great analogy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Can you unpack that a bit? What's the main idea there?
The tax return thing, it works because it implies direct consequences, right?
Yeah.
Accountability, just like your taxes are the final result of your finances for the year.
Right.
This view says our current situation, our purpose, even the challenges we face, they're the direct result of karma built up from past lives. And the key bit the source hammers home is you don't get to veto it.
No veto power.
Exactly. It suggests a real lack of conscious control over the big picture of our destiny. because it's shaped by all these past actions. So maybe the difficult stuff you're going through isn't just random bad luck. Maybe it's part of this karmic accounting.
Right. So when you hear those common phrases like, oh, your destiny is to bring light and healing, the source kind of snaps back with, are you sure it's not vengeance and legally questionable behavior?
Yeah, it's pretty blunt.
It totally throws a wrench into a lot of mainstream spiritual thinking. What does that stark contrast make you think about the very positive language we often use?
Well, it's a bit of a reality check, isn't it? It reminds us to question those maybe overly idealistic stories we tell ourselves about spiritual purpose.
Mm-hmm.
By asking that blunt question, the source makes us face the less comfortable possibilities. Aspects of destiny that might involve cleaning up old messes or experiencing the blowback from past mistakes, ours, or maybe even from further back. It highlights that karma, cause and effect, isn't always sunshine and rainbows like we might prefer to think.
Okay, so maybe we don't get a say in this karmic tax return, this destiny thing. The source then says something pretty bold. Destiny is often just spiritual code for you're not in control.
Ooh, direct.
Yeah, that's pretty direct, maybe a little unsettling. What's the core idea behind that?
I think it cuts right to the anxiety and the searching that often goes with this whole destiny concept. Believing in a set path can feel comforting, sure, because it implies order.
Right, like there's a plan.
But it can also feel really disempowering because it suggests you don't have much free will. This statement really leans into that second part. It suggests that sometimes maybe we use the idea of destiny to explain away or just accept feeling like we don't have real agency in our lives. Have you ever felt that pull, that tension, wanting purpose but feeling like a passenger?
Oh, absolutely. And it uses this analogy. It's kind of darkly funny, but also quite sharp. It talks about being sheep herded through an emotional car wash.
Huh. Yeah, I can picture that.
You're just like dragged through these intense feelings and experiences, maybe not fully getting why, and then pop out the other side being told, congrats, you fulfilled your mission.
That emotional car wash image is so good. It captures that feeling of being hit by intense stuff that feels totally out of your hands.
Totally.
And the sheep herded part just adds to that sense of not being in charge, of being guided by forces you can't see. And yeah, the ironic congratulations at the end, suggesting maybe we get credit for things that weren't really our conscious choice anyway.
And it even applies this thinking to something really common, like pursuing a healer life, wanting to help people. It suggests even that path, which seems so positive, might not be purely your choice. It might be karma choosing you. And that could lead to some pretty unzen outcomes, like being broke, exhausted, and surrounded by crystals that don't even sparkle, right?
Demystifying it a bit.
Totally demystifying it. Does that clash with the often idealized image we have of, like, spiritual practitioners?
I think it does. It gives a much more grounded view, acknowledging the real struggles and sacrifices that can come with that kind of work.
Yeah.
It pushes back against that picture of the perfectly serene, always abundant healer. It suggests that even paths that look selfless might actually be driven by these deeper karmic things, not just personal desire. And yeah, they could definitely come with real personal costs.
And it goes further, arguing that this whole chase for destiny might be rooted in, like, old trauma or subtle family pressures or even just some psychic reading someone had years ago.
Right. The foundations might be shaky.
Exactly. It's like our whole idea of our destined path might be built on things we haven't really examined. Does thinking about that make you question the origins of your own sense of direction sometimes?
Oh, absolutely. It's such a key point about how unconscious stuff influences us, right? Our beliefs about ourselves, our purpose. Are we really following some authentic inner voice? Or are we just reacting to old wounds or what our family expects or what society pushes? Or, yeah, even just random things like a psychic reading that's somehow stuck. This perspective really pushes you to look critically at the stories you tell yourself about your life and where those stories actually came from.
Okay, let's switch gears slightly. The source also critiques this idea of working on my own energy, which is, a really common phrase in spiritual circles.
Very common, yeah.
The source seems pretty skeptical of people who claim total spiritual independence, people who say things like, I don't need a channel, I am the channel.
Well,
what's the issue there, according to this perspective?
Well, the core argument seems to be about interconnectedness.
Yeah.
About how energy actually works. The source suggests that nobody really operates in, like, a total vacuum, energetically speaking.
Okay.
We're all part of bigger systems, things we might not even see or be aware of. So this idea of being a completely self-sufficient channel, it's seen as maybe a bit of an illusion. maybe even denying the influences that are constantly flowing through us, shaping us.
It uses this really strong metaphor, comparing us to a battery that always has to be plugged into something,
Right.
whether that's our family line or bigger universal forces, or maybe even something less obviously spiritual. That image really lands. What does that idea of needing to be plugged in say about our energy?
It makes the point really powerfully, doesn't it? That our personal energy isn't just created out of thin air. It flows through networks, connections, relationships, visible and invisible.
Yeah.
Mentioning family lineage and universal forces connects to really old ideas about energetic inheritance and how everything's linked, and suggesting other, maybe less obvious influences. It's a good reminder that where our energy comes from might not always be what we think it is or what we choose.
And the source says that when someone confidently states they've never connected to anything, it might just mean they're blind to the thing that already claimed them. That's kind of chilling, isn't it?
It is a bit unsettling, yeah.
Suggests ignorance rather than independence.
Exactly. It implies that just because you don't feel connected doesn't mean there's no influence. It could actually mean you're unconsciously connected to something that's already shaping your life, your experiences, your so-called own energy. It really highlights how important self-awareness is, looking beyond the surface to understand what's really going on.
Which leads pretty naturally into talking about spiritual gifts. We often think of these as wonderful, innate blessings, right?
Usually, yeah, positive things.
But this source offers a very different angle. It suggests they might actually be someone else's karmic leftover, maybe inherited from ancestors who weren't, all sweetness and light. That's a pretty radical thought.
It's definitely nuanced and probably uncomfortable for some people. It challenges that romantic idea that gifts are purely good and just handed down from on high.
Right.
By calling them karmic leftovers, it implies these abilities might carry baggage, like the leftover energy or consequences of past actions, unresolved stuff from our family line. The example it gives about the seemingly pious grandmother maybe having a hidden darker side, that really illustrates how complex family histories can be and where inherited traits or abilities might really come from.
And the analogy it uses, cosmic booby trap passed down like trauma-laced Tupperware.
Oh, wow. That's vivid.
Isn't it? It's dark, but it paints such a clear picture. These inherited energies might look like gifts, but they could be problematic if you don't understand them. Have you ever thought about seemingly positive traits maybe having, like, a shadow side or complex origin?
The Tupperware thing makes it so relatable. Something passed down, maybe with good intentions, but potentially holding something messy or even harmful inside if you're not careful.
Yeah.
And the booby trap part really drives home the potential danger. These unfiltered, inherited energies could blow up in unexpected ways, negative ways, if we don't get their source and learn how to handle them consciously.
And it talks about a karmic invoice arriving later, showing up in weird places, your health, your relationships, your money.
Oh, dear.
If you're using this inherited energy without really knowing its roots. And the detail about karma being patient, using unexpected routes, that's quite striking. It makes you wonder about things that seem like random bad luck.
It really does emphasize the long game, doesn't it? The unforeseen consequences of our actions and the actions of those before us. Karma, in this view, isn't always instant or obvious. It can hang around for ages, maybe lifetimes, and then pop up in ways that seem totally disconnected from the original gift or energy. It really underlines why you need to approach any spiritual abilities or inherited patterns carefully, with respect and a real willingness to understand the whole story, the full implications.
Okay, so given all these warnings, these potential traps, this kind of sobering view of destiny we've been discussing, the source does pivot. It moves towards a more empowered way of thinking.
Good, okay.
Instead of just passively wondering, what's my destiny? It says we should be asking different questions, active questions. What are some of those key questions it suggests?
Yep, this shift is really important. Instead of trying to decode some fixed future, the source pushes us towards focusing on our present agency, our self-awareness now.
Right now.
The key questions it floats are things like, what do I want to do with what I've got? Which focuses on your current skills, resources, desires. Then, what am I naturally good at? Pointing towards your inherent talents. Also, who am I aligned with? Making you think about your connections, your community, who supports you. And maybe the biggest one, who the hell is actually powering this operation? Which really stresses that critical need to understand where your energy is really coming from, what influences are actually at play.
That last one really hits hard, doesn't it? that need to know the who behind the energy, not just accepting it or assuming it's all you. It demands a much more discerning look at your own spiritual setup.
Absolutely. It encourages a more conscious, more critical, and ultimately, more empowered way to engage with your spiritual life. By asking who's really powering things, you're prompted to look past the surface. Consider the deeper forces, the intentions, the potential fallout associated with your energy, your drives, and what you think of as your gifts.
And the source kind of wraps it all up by repeating that really provocative line, destiny isn't a gift, it's a job.
A job, yeah.
And then it adds this final kicker, this warning. Someone else might have knowingly or unknowingly forged your name on that karmic contract. That just leaves you thinking, doesn't it? It really shifts the whole feeling.
It really does. Framing destiny as a job, not a passive gift, puts the emphasis on responsibility, not just receiving.
Yeah.
And that unsettling idea about your name being forged on a karmic contract, it really highlights the possibility that we might be caught up in forces or agreements we're not even aware of, which, again, just underlines the need for that deep self-inquiry, that discernment as we try to navigate our path.
So to kind of bring this deep dive together, the source we looked at today offers a pretty challenging, definitely unconventional view of destiny and spiritual purpose. It suggests maybe it's less about inherent goodness or some guaranteed happy ending, and more about understanding consequences, that karma's tax return idea, and being way more aware of the hidden influences shaping our lives, even our gifts.
Precisely. It really encourages stepping away from those maybe overly romantic ideas about spirituality. It pushes for a more critical, questioning, and ultimately more self-aware look at our own journeys.
Yeah.
It shines a light on the complexities, even the less glamorous sides of destiny, urging us to keep asking about the real origins and potential impacts of our motivations and abilities.
So as you, our listener, go about your day, maybe thinking about your own inner world, we'd encourage you to really mull over the questions this source raises. Think about your own deep motivations, what you're naturally good at, sure, but also take some real time to consider the forces inside and out that might be influencing your life.
And maybe most importantly, the next time you catch yourself or someone else talking about following your destiny, just pause for a second. Ask that final, really provocative question the source leaves us with. Whose?
Whose destiny?
Exactly. Whose? Asking that might just open up a deeper, maybe more honest, and definitely more empowering way to understand the big spiritual ideas that shape our lives.